here's another one. This is another thing that I made. I think this was in like N-Frame 2. So it was another a piece of video work that's still building on the idea of like making film something more than it is, something more than an image in another world that you sort of like enter first in your imagination. So I want them to sort of like, I think I want the world here and the world inside the screen to sort of like have a more solid or more equal level, where sometimes things pass in, things pass out, and it's more like on an equal ontological footing, if you want to get, philosophical about it, kind of like even the ontological weight of the two places. So this is the I'm starting to call the media installations. Maybe I should talk a little bit about this also. Oh no, just keep on. This one's about 2 minutes long. So I stole this off YouTube. It's basically a guy demonstrating how to lift a sandbag over here again. Anyway. Alright. So there's actually the thing that was a close-up kanina was a photoelectric sensor. And the sandbag is white and this is black. So every time the white sandbag passes in front of the photoelectric sensor, it closes a switch. And what the switch does is, you'll see this in a little bit, it makes this old CD player open and close. Like that. And as it opens and closes, it makes this crank move. And what this crank does is basically, it winds thread around this old VHS spool. So the story of this, the word spinning Jimmy comes from spinning Jenny. It was like an old 20th century, thread spinning machine. It's like an iconic piece of industrial revolutionary machinery. So basically, it was a time labor-saving device, right? So it allowed, Anyway, so basically this was supposed to demonstrate, to sort of like create this talisman, this magical spool of thread, which was wound by Jimmy, the sandbag guy. It's like video ghost, but actually doing work in the real world. The spool of thread was actually wound by a video ghost doing work in the real world. So, it's kind of literal and naive way of trying to make the person do stuff in the real world, but I think it works because there's this kind of like a different aura to that thread. Like the fact that it was like crossed over somehow. There's labor, somebody in the other world sort of like crossed over and wound a piece of thread in the real world. That was sort of another form of fighting against the limitations of film. So, and then the next thing I made, which I spent 3 months in Singapore doing, basically building on the technology of this photoelectric stuff, was Quartet, and I worked with a programmer there. Let me just play this a bit. Spinning Jimmy, moved a white sandbag in front of a photoelectric cell. These guys are dropping these white drumsticks in front of photoelectric cells, and as a result, playing metal instruments in the real world. So they're basically they're virtual gamelan players that play gamelan in the real world. This is another attempt to make them even more than Jimmy, cross into the real world. I mean, we usually interact with the virtual world in the form of, we are the masters and we are the slaves. Video games, the mouse, you can move your hand and the mouse follows it. Or you shoot things and then, virtual, video game cars crash or whatever in the real world. But I wanted them to control something in the real world. So to cross from inside the screen out, for them to influence things in the real world. So I give them the most naive form of presence in the real world as possible. The one that makes you believe that somebody is here is if they have the power to hit things. So that, okay, make them hit metal, like that. And I think it worked because there were a couple of kids that freaked out in here. They started crying, partly because they're headless. I don't know why, but it seemed important that xylophone players would be headless. And of course, it's all. So this is another form of another part of film which I was violating or fighting against. Was the fact that film usually is dead in that there's a beginning, a middle, and the end, and it's set in stone. Of course, this is generative. This guy is conducting them because there's like a computer seeing his gestures, so it's like, go faster, go slower, stop, do something different. So basically you're conducting a little orchestra here, and they're interacting with you, so they're alive, And that's partly why the kids were crying, because they feel that there are beings in the room, inside the room with them, that they would rather not be there with. They're not things on the screen. They're strangers, pretty noisy strangers like that. So that's what this one. So it's aside from being it's generative as opposed to films being static, and it's interactive again as opposed to film being static. That's basically the, okay, there's just this one other thing which I'm still working on, but rather than show you documentation of that, maybe I'll show this thing also. So, like I said, a lot of my practice has sort of like evolved from working with editing films to working with computers, which is like what films are made with now. So this one is another thing that we do that involves, trying to make stuff, make the image move with act to do stuff live. So essentially, it's a program I wrote which is supposed to create sound by gesture. Developing this on Tuesdays with Malik Lopez. It's the synthesis, so he's like going to be the one to make the sounds a bit more interesting. And hopefully it's for making video live and correlating the image to the sound, making sound with image. So the actual next slide is of this. And so that's that.
It's still something you're currently developing, or?
Yes, I'm still currently developing that. It's totally, you know, in the beginning phase, and actually, we only succeeded just making it really do this stuff within the last 2 weeks or something. So, ayun, it's still me like butting my head against the idea of the fact that, you know, trying to make the image world and this world sort of intersect more by various ways. So like here you're walking on the image and like, you know, and sort of like feeling the, you know, giving the possibility of like walking into the image. That's why it's sort of like man-sized. It's much more uncanny. The image is sort of like something that corresponds to physical actions. It's something that you can walk on, something that you can walk into. The door is also door size. So when the image is actually about your size, no bigger, not smaller, then you think that that's a big thing for making the world sort of like come closer to home. So that's all. And thanks for your attention.